I do is I want to measure out my ingredients here. The first thing that I did is I took 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, that's this stuff here, and put into a container with 3 tablespoons of water, warm water, 105 degrees, and a pinch of sugar. And the sugar is just in there to kind of kickstart the yeast into overdrive. You really don't have to put the sugar, but I do. But I don't always. And you let that sit for about 10-15 minutes, and you'll start to see it thicken up and bubble. That's how you know that the yeast is waking up and getting ready to start doing the work. So, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna measure our flour. So we want 360 grams of this. So each of these spoons that I use here is about 60 grams. So it's about half a cup. So about 6 spoons of this will come out to 360. I was a little short on one of those spoons, it looks like. And there, so we got 360 grams of flour. Cool. Gonna lay that in there. Do a little well in the middle. I'm using bread flour for this. You can use bread flour or you can use all-purpose flour. Basic difference between the two. All-purpose flour has a lower protein content, and protein is what's in the flour to create gluten. So when you have 3 kinds of flour you can get in the market. There's bread flour, all-purpose flour, and cake flour. Basic difference between the 3, although I'm sure there are more, but the main difference between the 3 is the protein. So in bread flour, there'll be a higher protein content, which you want because protein, when it gets wet, basically becomes like Velcro. And so it starts to form strands of gluten. That's that, if you look inside of bread, that's that rough pattern that you see that where the bubbles form. So that gluten network is what creates the structure of the bread. So for bread, you want to have structure. That's the way it's able to hold the gas and trap the gases when it rises. All-purpose flour is kind of a balance. It's a lower protein count, but there's still protein, so it has some structure. But it can also be used for baking like cakes, things where you don't want that tougher, chewy structure. And then lastly, there's cake flour, which has the lowest protein count, and that's what you would use to bake a cake. So you get that super silky soft bread texture. That's going to be cake flour. So those are your 3 different kinds of flour. So for this one, I like a chewier crust, or excuse me, a crispier crust. So for that, I'm going to use bread flour. If I wanted a chewier crust, I could use all-purpose flour. If I wanted a pizza dough that wasn't really pizza dough, it's just like cake, I would use cake flour. But I mean, who wants that? No, it's not even pizza anymore. So that was 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of olive oil in here. This is a pourer that I got from a bartending store, and this is a 1/2 ounce pourer. So it measures at 1/2 ounce of oil, which is exactly 1 tablespoon. So that's how I'm able to measure out my my oil really accurately without having to use an extra spoon. Okay, so I got those in there. Then I'm going to add my water. There's going to be 1 cup of water, about 78 degrees, so kind of lukewarmish. And this, you can see, used to be just water, but now you can see how foamy it is. That's the yeast. So we're going to put that in there all together. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to auto-lyse this. So, auto-lysing, what that means, and I'm going to do this all by hand. I've kind of become a fan of making stuff by hand because then I can really feel my ingredients. It's a little messy, yeah, but you know what? That's life. So, basic method I want to use here, I want to keep my fingers together so that the dough, this shaggy mess, doesn't get in between my fingers. So you can see I'm keeping my fingers closed, and I'm scooping it in over each other into a really, really rich, shaggy mess. That's what I want. I don't want to knead this yet. All I want to do is make sure that all those ingredients are in there and they're worked up. I'm going to keep my spatula nearby to just kind of scrape my fingers off. And that's what we want. So right there, it looks like that big shaggy mess. And next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna autolyze. So basically that's gonna allow the dough to rest. And what's happening during this period is the liquid and the yeast and the salt really is evenly gonna distribute itself throughout that flour. We don't want to knead it or do anything else, because that kneading is the basic process that creates gluten. It creates that structure, and that's not what we want. In fact, we're not going to knead this dough at all. We're going to use another technique called folding. And there are two kind of basic methods. There's the pincer method, and then there's the folding method. I'm going to use the folding method. The pincer method I'm not really comfortable with yet, so we'll use the folding method. So we're going to take that, we're going to cover it in some plastic wrap, the infamous Costco roll of plastic wrap that I keep right here, that Tina Marie always makes fun of. Like, we've been married for 10 years and we've only gone through 1.5 boxes of it. It's great stuff. So we're gonna leave that there. We're gonna let that rest for about 20 minutes. So we'll be back in 20 minutes and see what's going on. So it's been about 20 minutes. And you can see there's already been a little bit of activity, a little bit of a rise. That's not what we're going for though. What we're going for is the structure. Just letting the dough evenly distribute the water. So now I'm going to take a surface here and flour. I like doing it on this cutting board. It's probably not the safest thing to do because I always use the same cutting board and I use it for everything, but you know what? Life happens. So I'm going to drop it on there on well floured cutting board. All right. I flip it over so there's flour on both sides. And now this is the key. I'm not kneading it. I am not going to knead this. All I'm doing is folding. So I'm going to take this side. I'm going to fold it over that way. Take this side. I'm going to fold it over that way. I'm going to take this top end. I'm going to fold it over this way. I'm going to take this bottom side. I'm going to fold it over that way. I'm going to press it down. That's it. That's it. I'm not going to keep working it back and forth. That's it. I can feel that the grit of the salt is dissolved and this dough is so chill. Look how loose it is. So we don't want a whole lot of structure in it because then it's going to get tight. All right. So now we're going to take that and in the same bowl we just had, we're going to cover that in some olive oil so it doesn't stick. And now we're going to have the rise. So I'm going to coat the insides of that with some olive oil so that it doesn't stick. I'm going to take that dough, I'm going to drop it in there, bam, roll it around, flip it over, get olive oil on both sides, and all around. That's it. Now this is the hard part. We're going to cover this again, and we're going to let it sit room temperature for about an hour. I'm just going to let it sit there. I'm going to sit there and rise. If the kitchen's really cold, something good you can do is put it on top of the stove. If your stove has like a gas pilot, and the stove is always warm. If not, you can turn the broiler on or the oven on for about 5-10 minutes, let the oven get warm, and then turn it off and leave the door open. And that'll create some natural heat, which is what I do. So I'm going to put that over there by the oven. I'm going to let it just chill for about an hour. So I'm going to turn that broiler on, leave the door open for about 5 minutes. And I'm going to scrape all this into the trash can. A note about this, so because this flour has a lot of protein and it forms gluten really easily, you don't want to just rinse this down into the sink because then it's going to create globs of flour that just get stuck in the pipes. So you can see one right there. So if I just empty this out in the sink, this isn't going to dissolve. This is pretty strong stuff. And it won't just fall apart. It won't just dissolve away because, like I said, once that flour gets wet, the gluten starts to form up like Velcro. And it'll just lock into itself and it'll create this blob. And what's giving us that structure for our bread is also the thing that's going to stop it from going down the sink, and it's going to clog it worse than fat would. So you're going to want to scrape this into the trash can. And once you've got most of the flour off, then you can go and rinse it off. Okay, so that's going to chill for about an hour. So what I do, take a marker, and it's currently 9:15 p.m. So that means at 10:15, I have the timer right on top, that's when I'm gonna take my next step. Now my next step is actually gonna be just to pop that in the fridge and let it sit overnight in the fridge. We're gonna let it sit in there for about 12 hours. We're not gonna touch this again until tomorrow. And that's when I'm gonna take the dough, I'm gonna divide it into 2 rounds, because there's enough to make 2 pizzas. I'm gonna divide it into 2 rounds and then proof them again in the fridge. I wanna proof them in the fridge because the longer that the bacteria works at the flour, the deeper the flavor gets. When you open this up, it's gonna smell almost like, you know, like it's going bad, like it's spoiled. It's gonna start smelling a little bit like beer. And that's really what you want. That's what's developing that deep, deep flavor in the crust. The longer it gets to sit and work, the better it's going to taste. That's why it's called cold proofing. So next time you join me will be tomorrow, and that's going to be when I take this out to divide it and set it up in rounds to proof. And then after that, we're going to make dinner pizza for dinner tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow. So I just wanted to come back really quick and show you the flour here. The ball has doubled in size. It's been about an hour. And so it's doubled in volume, and that's what we're looking for. So that means that the yeast is digesting all the sugars inside of the flour, and it's creating those pockets of gas, those pockets of carbon dioxide inside, and that's what's going to create the structure and the bubbles inside of our crust. So now from here, this is going to go in the fridge, and it's going to chill there overnight. Tomorrow, about 6 hours before I'm going to cook it, I'll divide it, roll it up into rounds, and then proof it. And then from there, we'll make it into pizza. All right. What's up, everyone? What's up, everyone? Olivia wants me to say what's up, everyone. So we're back with the next part of this, which is moving on to the proofing. So this dough's been sitting in the fridge overnight for about a little more than 12 hours, probably about 15 hours. And so now you can see all the bubbles and stuff. That's what's really been happening there. So all the yeast has been digesting all the sugars inside of the flour, and this is ready for the next step. So what we're gonna do, again, we're gonna take our work surface, we're gonna flour it up, make sure stuff doesn't stick. You can be liberal with it at this point, just, you know, don't be wasteful. I'm gonna make sure that your surface is covered. And we're gonna gently coax this dough out of the bowl and onto here. You'll see it's like a shaggy mess. You see all the bubbles on the bottom. That's where, you know, the yeast has been digesting and the gases have been getting stuck. So we got that on there. We're gonna put some flour on top. And now, the next step is we're gonna divide it. It's actually enough dough to make 2. So we're gonna take this. This is a pastry knife. You can just use a knife or a spatula. It works just as well. I like this because it cuts a lot more cleanly, and I can also use it to scrape my surface when I'm done. We're gonna cut that apart. And now we've got 2 rounds. So from here, we're gonna shape these into rounds. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that and just fold it over onto itself, just like that. We don't wanna smash it. We just wanna shape it into a round, just like that. Put all the seams on the bottom. And you can kind of pinch them together, but you really don't need to. And we're gonna put it on the surface, we're just gonna work it back and forth, and that's gonna help seal that seam. Now, if it's not, there needs to be a little bit of friction, so if you're at a point where the friction's not happening and it's not closing up on the bottom, then just remove some of the flour, just like that. We kind of move it back and forth, and that motion back and forth is gonna seal up that seam on the bottom for the most part. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing with this one. So we're gonna fold it over into itself. Just like that. See that big cut there? That's fine, don't even worry about it. Put that in there. Just work it back and forth. But again, not smashing it. We don't wanna undo all the work that the yeast was doing in there, making all those bubbles. So now this dough is incredibly relaxed. It's really, really soft. And that's what you want to have. If it feels tight, then what's going to happen is those gluten strands start to rip and the dough doesn't do what it's supposed to. So now we're going to take a baking sheet here. I'm going to put some flour on it. And we're just going to gently set those right there on top of the flour. Then we're going to dust the tops with a little bit more flour, just like that.
And then I want to say hi.
You want to say hi, buddy? Get in there. Just look right here.
Hello,
Get in there.
my leopard
Ethan
shark.
is drawing a leopard shark. The Aquarium of the Pacific, shout out to the Aquarium of the Pacific. They sent us some cool coloring pages, so they're working on those during their quiet time. After lunch, they do half-an-hour chores. They clean door handles and just kind of clean up the house, wipe all the counters and stuff, doorknobs, and then for about an hour, hour and a half, they do a quiet activity. So they can do puzzles, they can read, they can take a nap if they wanted to, although they're not gonna. Yeah, there are no more naps in our life. There are no more naps in our lives. That's okay. That means we sleep better at night. So then we're gonna take that, we're gonna cover it with plastic wrap after we floured the tops to make sure it doesn't stick to the plastic wrap. And we're gonna leave that out for about an hour and a half to proof. Go ahead and say hi, babe. Right up there. There's Olivia. Olivia colored a lorikeet. Shout out to Adriana. Adriana loves lorikeets. Hour and a half. And then they went into the fridge. So now, because the pizza dough is really, really soft, and so if you try to work with it when it's warm, it's more likely to tear. So what I do is I pop it in the fridge for about half an hour before I start working with it. So I'm gonna take that crust, I drop it right on here, get flour onto both sides. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press it down on the middle. So I'm gonna start to form that pizza crust shape. I'm working out from the middle and leaving that raised crust. So I'm pressing down flat, just like that. And I'm turning it over as I do that because I want to work it evenly from both sides. Okay. Just like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to let gravity start to stretch the dough. So I'm not rolling it out or pressing it out. I'm letting gravity stretch the dough for me. So I'm holding it along the edge. This is the part where you see like those, you know, professional pizza twirlers. And that's basically what they're doing. I'm not comfortable with that yet, so I don't do it. So I just let gravity do the job. So you see I still have my raised edge there. I'm just gonna keep working it out, letting gravity do my stretching. And you'll feel the dough start to pull back on itself, and that's that gluten network that we built up through the folding. Not through the kneading, but through the folding. And so that's why this pizza crust is totally chill right now. So we're there. Cool. Totally relaxed. Next thing we're gonna do is just give one more press along the sides, because we do want to have that raised edge for the crust. Now, I'm gonna take some flour, put it onto my peel just really lightly, and I'm gonna put that crust right on top. I'm gonna move it around just a little bit to make sure that it's secure. Spread it around one last time, just like that. Give the dough one last pressing on the edge. There we go. Make sure it still moves. First time I did this, I didn't put enough flour and do that last check before I started putting toppings. So then the pizza ended up just completely falling off the peel in the oven. And that was fun because then there was cheese and sauce all over the bottom of the oven. It was 525 degrees, so then the smoke detector went off. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Not really. If you feel like it's not really sliding around well, you can just throw some extra flour on the bottom. Find those places where it's not sliding well. Really do want to make sure that this pizza crust comes off cleanly in the And there it is. You can see the crust was able to get a little bit of extra browning action. You can see that some of the toppings over here, as I was pushing it in with the peel, ended up on the cheese side. We just won't tell the kids that that happened. And throw it back over there. There you go. And that little chiffonade, we'll just get that back over there too. Whatever, it's good for them. And there it is. So that's a cheese pizza, or cheese half and modified margherita on the other. So, hope you enjoyed this one. I look forward to doing some more in the future. Olivia's coming by now to take a look at the pizza. You want to take a look, Olivia? Oh, jeez. Get in there. Go there. Say hi. And all right. So, subscribe to my YouTubes, and I'm not gonna say follow my Instagrams and everything else because I don't have that. I have a YouTube. And cool. Catch you next time.